President Biden says the risk of nuclear Armageddon is at its highest since the Cuban Missile Crisis of the 1960s. The US president warned that Russian leader Vladimir Putin is not joking when he talks about using nuclear weapons following losses on the battlefield in Ukraine. In the latest incident, a Russian missile strike destroyed an apartment building in the southern city of Zaporizhzhia. Now, this came as Russian forces lost more ground to Ukraine's counteroffensive in the south and east.
Gutted by Russian rockets. Here in Zaporizhzhia, rescue workers search the rubble for missing residents. Local officials say several people were killed, while more have been hospitalized. After the initial dawn attack, firefighters headed to the scene. But a second salvo sent locals running for cover, as well as rescue workers. President Zelenskyy condemned the strikes.
In Zaporizhzhia, after the first rocket strike today, when people came to pick apart the rubble, Russia conducted a second rocket strike. Absolute vileness, absolute evil. And there have been thousands of instances of this already. And there could be thousands more, unfortunately.
Locals were left reeling.
Why are they doing this to us? What are they trying to prove? Killing old people? Why? For what?
The attacks come as Ukraine continues to force Russian troops back in the south and east. With these Ukrainian troops in the Donbass telling French reporters that they were using shells captured from the Russians. With winter fast approaching, Kyiv seems determined to press its current advantage as long as it can.
Straight to Ukraine then. Nick Connolly joins us from Kyiv. Welcome, Nick. We'll come to President Biden's comments in a moment. First, though, this attack on Zaporizhzhia seems to be part of a Russian pattern. Defeats on the battlefield, followed by attacks on civilian infrastructure.
Well, that's definitely the way it looks, and that's what the Ukrainian government has been talking about for a few weeks now. We've seen attacks on heating plants, on electricity infrastructure, also on water infrastructure. So there's a sense here that especially leading to this winter situation for civilians could get a lot worse, even for people living quite far away from the direct fighting, that they could be stuck in high-rise apartments without the ability to heat their homes or even the electricity to go about their work, their businesses. And there is this sense that Russia wants Ukrainian civilians to put pressure on their government to make compromises. That is basically the last hope, short of the kind of nuclear brinkmanship that we've been seeing in recent days, and that is now going to increase. It's interesting, we try to report on the situation, on what Ukraine is doing to repair that infrastructure, but they won't let us anywhere near it. They are very, very worried that any information could provide clues to the Russians about what else they could destroy and what else they could do to weaken this country's infrastructure.
And this nuclear brinkmanship is something that the US president has said that we should take very seriously because this is not a threat. This is something that we should. Mr. Putin's threat is something that we should take seriously. The biggest threat since the Cuban Missile Crisis. What do people there in Kyiv say?
Well, that's the interesting thing. So basically, up until the last couple of days, people just haven't been taking it seriously. They've been seeing it as a kind of symptom of Russian weakness, of desperation, an attempt to kind of escalate, given those kind of Russian failures on the battlefield, and basically kind of saber rattle. I think what really has made people think here have been those comments from the US, not only from Joe Biden, but also in previous kind of days and weeks from retired top US generals who've been kind of talking about what NATO, the US, would do in case of a Russian use of nuclear weapons, talking about sinking the Russian fleet, attacking all Russian troops on Ukrainian territory. I think that really has made people think that the US is taking this seriously, and we've seen how precise those US intelligence predictions were running into the war when people here didn't want to believe that Russia was going to launch a full-scale invasion, and those American predictions turned out to be right. So there's lots of kind of nervous talk about buying iodine tablets, working out what to do if a nuclear attack were to happen, and even lots of kind of dark humour about raves and the kind of things people would do on their last few days after a nuclear attack. So there's a kind of attempt to try and kind of lighten the tone, but people are now increasingly thinking about this seriously and thinking about what to do.
And all of this because Ukraine's counter-offensive has been so especially effective in the last few weeks. What is the latest on that?
So we've heard a figure coming out of the Ukrainian military establishment. They are talking about 500 square kilometers retaken in the Kherson region in the south just in the past week. The details are pretty sparse. They're keeping a very tight grip on media access, and so those details are kind of filtering through quite slowly. But definitely there's a lot of panic on Russian social media among the kind of military bloggers and people who support this war, who are really worried that those Russian forces in Kherson are going to be stuck on the western bank of the Dnieper River without any supplies coming in. The bridges have been destroyed, and the Ukrainians are really, hammering home with their artillery. So there's a sense that there are going to be more Ukrainian victories in the next couple of days while they try and take advantage of their kind of, momentum before the winter sets in, and the front lines kind of get more stuck and kind of less mobile in a couple of weeks.
All right, Nick, thank you for that. Nick Connolly in Kyiv. Well, the counter-offensive has come at a terrible cost. Thousands of soldiers have died, and there are constant casualties on both sides. DW correspondent Matthias Bullinger was given access to the front lines near Mykolaiv by the Ukrainian army and sent this report.
These positions are well fortified. The Ukrainian soldiers have withstood several months of shelling in these trenches. The lines haven't moved for most of that time. But recently, things started shifting up ahead. They've started to attack Russian positions more aggressively.
In some directions, we have been able to move forward. Even right now, an attack is going on. We try to put them under constant pressure, so it'll go our way.
Let
me show you where our guys live.
The soldiers stay here for several months. The army doesn't have enough personnel to rotate them in and out more often. This group is getting ready for the cold season.
In winter, we will have to heat all of this space.
We'll be in Kherson by then.
Let's hope so, for God's sake.
2 days ago, a shell hit just above their beds.
Thankfully, the roof is so well built, it didn't get through.
Further behind the lines, ambulances wait for injured soldiers to evacuate them to hospitals. We're told that 3 Ukrainians were hurt while storming a Russian position. Frontline paramedics hand them over to an ambulance that shuttles between the war zone and the hospital. Ukrainian authorities have admitted to roughly 10,000 dead soldiers. That's well below estimates of Russian losses, but neither side are releasing precise or credible numbers. This time, none of the injuries seem to be severe. The counterattack is costing Ukrainian blood. The paramedics say they've become busier recently.
The number of injured is higher during the attack because our guys move forward to the positions of the Russian villains. And then it's easy for the Russians to hit them because they know their positions well and can shell them.
The paramedics return to their waiting position. They don't know when the next trip to the hospital will be, but they know it will come.